welcome to Author Talk. I'm your host, Jim Dorman, and today we are very pleased to have author, I was talking about my Boston accent today, author Abigail Miles. Abigail majored in creative writing in college. In 2021, she was part of Tin House Writers Workshop. She's published short fiction to a variety of platforms, some of which include Cold Mountain Review, Strange Fictions, Bending Genres, The Quiet Ones, Marathon Lit, and Bookends Review. But we're here today to discuss her very first novel, The Building That Wasn't, was published in July by Camcat Publishing. It's her very first novel, and it's a good one. I haven't finished it. I'd say at first I was saying science fiction. Some people have said horror or mystery thriller. Supernatural thriller, I think all of those could apply. We could talk about that. But I think it grabs your attention, keeps you guessing right through. It's surprising, thought-provoking, has twists and turns, and an exciting conclusion. So welcome, Abigail Miles, to Author Talk.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Those are many very kind things you said about my book.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, like I say, it's always the nicest thing to, when we do this show, get to read someone's work like that. Yeah. And so it's exciting. Do you feel, how did it feel to have the first book published?
Oh, so great. It took me like 6 years to write this one, so it was a great relief, I guess, to finally have it off my plate and off into the world. Right. And nerve-wracking, I guess, to have people finally reading this thing that had been all my own for 6 years. Yeah.
And I've been looking around online and things, and there's some great reviews of people enjoying it, and I know it's been picked up by a lot of big libraries, which is kind of a good sign, right?
Yeah, I mean, always trust the librarians, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd love to talk to you more about all about that in the process, but just could you give us a little bit, just what is the book about? What's the premise? I'd rather have you tell us that first.
Sure, yeah. So The Building That Wasn't is a very strange book. It's slightly hard to describe, I think. But I do say it's science fiction first, but it's definitely a genre bender, so I'll call it like a sci-fi thriller. Okay. Or like a genre-bending mystery. So the book starts off with our main character, whose name is Everly, who's this woman who finds or is led to this very strange building that she goes into, and inside is bombarded by really intense feelings of deja vu as she's sort of going through and meeting people who are living in the building and seem to be like residents there, but are kind of odd people. And as she's being led around by this man who she's just met, but who claims to be her grandfather, and she's feeling really unsure about just a lot of things, but the more she goes through this building, the more she's getting these really intense deja vu feelings, where she feels like she's already met all of these people and had these conversations and experiences, but she just really has no idea why that would possibly be. So again, like I said, sort of a genre-bending mystery of her trying to figure out what this strange building is and who all of these people inside of it are, and how she may or may not be connected to all of it. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think that's a great description. And the first, I mean, I don't know exactly how many pages of, definitely the first 100 pages of the book. I felt like I was looking at every word to say, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, what is that going to lead to? Or, why did they say that?
Yeah, and then I think because our main character goes into it completely blind, so it's supposed to be written in a sort of way where the reader is also very blind going through, so you're trying to figure out the same questions that Everly's trying to figure out. And like you said, in the first 100 pages or so especially.
Which holds your attention. It's a little bit, well, I don't want to say it's work, but it's like, wait a second, we're going to have to come back to this, because I hope I'm going to get that answer, that question.
Yeah.
I think maybe almost like maybe a puzzle or a painting, or we're filling this in now. Like, oh, okay.
Yes, all the layers and pieces that are scattered about, and eventually.
And we're going to get that, but I'm not sure when. But I'm going to be patient.
Yes.
So, I guess simply, what inspires you to write this? So how did it's very involved. To me, it's just kind of amazing, or I look at it and say, how do you come up with this that type of thing? How do you can't, you just, so anyways, I'll stick with it first part of the question.
So my inspiration for this book initially came from a dream, which I think partially does explain why it's such a bizarre book with so many very very otherworldly, out there sort of ideas, because it came from a dream that I woke up from and was very fascinated by my own imagination and my subconscious. And so I wrote down all I could remember about it. But there were just really specific details from the dream that I won't even say because they're kind of spoilers in the way that they got worked into the book. But there were things from the dream that I thought were really interesting, things my brain had conjured up that wouldn't be possible in real world logic.
Right.
So I decided I wanted to kind of shape a story to mirror this dream that I'd had in a way that made it make sense in some sort of logic that could be followed by readers, even if it's not quite real world logic yet, which gives it sort of a surreal quality, I think. So in the dream, it was a character who was me in the dream, because usually it's ourselves in the dreams. My main character is not me, but it was a person who found or was led to a building similar, I guess, to the building in my book, where she meets a lot of people that strike her as strangely familiar, and then, like I said, a lot of other details from the dream that became kind of spoilery type details in the book. But I was just very intrigued by the specific details that I woke up with from this dream. I feel like most dreams you wake up from when you're really foggy and half remembered, but this one was just really clear for some reason, so I wanted to write it down.
Do you do that exercise that a lot of writers do, is to write down their dreams when they wake up? I know I've done that before, and sometimes it's crazy. You know, we'll stick with you on that one. Do you do that?
Occasionally, not every single dream. I'm not in the habit of waking up and jotting down, because most of my dreams end up being just like anxiety dreams about something I'm stressing over with work or whatnot, or they're just random conglomerations of things. But every once in a while, there's a really vivid, specific dream full of like imagery or emotions. I think that that's the main thing that I'm drawn to with a few dreams that I've had, is waking up having experienced emotions in the dream that are maybe more intense even than what I'm used to in real life, and just being really struck by what that did to the story of the dream. So there are like 4 or 5 dreams that were like that where I've written them down, but this is the only one that I've created into a book so far. So we'll see.
Okay. Having actually worked in a few tall buildings and gone into some strange buildings. I missed probably not your purpose at all, but I felt a strange connection to that, where you go into a building and there's someone there behind a desk or something, or next thing you're on another floor and you don't know what.
And it just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, it just goes and you don't know, and you try to take in whatever kind of attitude you get from whoever you might encounter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was I think that and a lot of other things I found relatable. Also personal relationships between some of the characters and things like that. But and now the way as you speak about the dream thing, I've had a lot of these. It's crazy. I've had a lot of these skyscraper dreams. Sometimes I end up on the outside of the building.
Oh no!
But it's very safe. I can fly. Anyway, this is
as long as you can fly.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Did you read a lot of like science fiction type of things growing up? I mean, is that what you write usually, or?
Well, I'm a big sci-fi person. It's not my only genre that I like to read or would like to write. I like sci-fi, fantasy, anything sort of speculative. I generally am really drawn to reading books that are mashups of genres, which is why I sort of wrote a mashup of genre. Like books that maybe aren't science fiction or fantasy is the what you see when you first pick it up, but then they have like little dashes of other different magical elements or weird elements woven into it that make it sort of different from reality. But yeah, I do read and have ideas for a lot of different sci-fi stories and fantasy things and just that whole realm.
All right. Well, I kind of grew up a long time ago in the 70s, well, the 60s too, actually. But and there were a lot of like movies and probably books. I don't know if I read all the books, but you had me thinking of things like, and I'll excuse you if you don't know these, but like Logan's Run, is that?
Oh no!
No, what? Yeah, no. Okay, and even like Planet of the Apes, but there was a Soylent Green. These were all kind of like these alternate realities, usually in the future sometime, where people didn't, lives were really different, and they were kind of had rules and these regulations and people in charge and trying to control them. And in Logan's Run, you actually couldn't be more than 30.
Oh, fascinating.
and they were runners.
That makes sense with the title. I've had people, like this comparison, say that my book reminds them of The Matrix, which is also kind of fitting into that category of like future societies where people are living lives that they don't completely understand what is happening around them, or like factors beyond their control in their lives, and just
and but it's very unique in its way, especially the idea of the building. Was it always going to be a building?
It was always going to be a building. That was one of the things in the dream that stuck with me from the very beginning. I was always fascinated by having this building as this central piece of a story, like the setting as almost a character, really, being so integral, to everything happening within it. So,
And we've got quite a few, some unique names, some not as unique names of actually the building.
Yeah.
The eschatologic.
Yeah,
how's that?
I say it in my head, eschatologic, which is like essentially what you just said, which is great. It is a very long name.
It's six syllables, I believe, if I counted right. But anyway, you don't get too many 6-syllable words.
No. So I think, for the building's name, because I knew it was going to be such a central part of the book, I was at the very early initial drafting stages, way back when, very concerned with thinking of just the right name or whatever, like something unique or something meaningful or something that would stick. Anyway, so I stumbled upon a word in real life, which is eschatology, which is a word for like the study of theology, especially pertaining to like the afterlife and death and like end times and that kind of thing. And I thought it was a fascinating word that I hadn't known before that. And thought it was interesting thematically to sort of apply to my building and some of the not so great things that happen within it. Right.
It took me a while. I didn't stop and look that up until, but then I said, oh yes, that makes sense. And it does follow in with those other things of end of times, or the someone coming, even like religions and things. You don't really. I kind of like that you didn't really get into religion. I
mean, not like forward facing. You can. I like my book also because it's, I think, very up for interpretation. People can read it in many different ways. I kind of like not even saying specifically how it should be read. I think it's one of those, or I like to imagine that it can be the kind of story that you can read a lot of different things out of what the characters go through and what the story ultimately leads towards.
And of course the main character is Everly Tertium, yes? And that's an interesting name in itself. Even just Everly, I guess, is with the Everly brothers. But Everly is a first name. I don't know. I haven't encountered.
Well, I find most of my characters' first names actually off of like baby name lists. You just go and scroll through like hundreds of names of baby names, and then I tend to just pull out the ones that sound nice. So I found Everly's name on one of those lists. But I also just loved the way it sounded and the way it fit with the character, but also like ever as fitting with very like time related words, like forever, everlasting, and these kinds of temporal type terminology. And so I thought it was also very fitting for the story that she was placed inside of.
Well, she's very relatable. We don't really meet her to like chapter 2, I think. And the first chapter had me scared that it was going to be like Dexter or some kind of horror thing. I was like, oh no, it was good. Not to give anything away, but first chapter was, but but then I was like, okay, what's going to happen here? There's a scary room.
It throws you in the deep end right away.
Right. And then I found Everly very relatable and kind of drawn into what was going on there, and with a funeral scene, and kind of wondering what her life was like, or what her life was going to be like. So that was good because it made me care about her, like right away. So how about the writing? What's your process like?
Sure. Well, this was my first book, so I think I like to say that the writing process for this book was a process of rewriting, where I was sort of figuring out what kind of writer I wanted to be and also how to effectively write a book as I was going through this. So that's why it took several years to write, because I think I went through a total of something like 7 or 8 drafts of completely redoing the book in the course of trying to get it to the right place, the right story where I wanted it to be. I'm very much a write and see where it goes, and then after it exists, go back and fix it kind of writer. I'm very, very bad at outlining in advance. I can outline very small sections in advance, but I don't like outlining whole stories in advance. I like letting the characters just go, kind of, and seeing where the story ends up winding, which leads to a lot of, holes and breaks and things that you have to go back and mend. But I really actually enjoy revision quite a bit. So I enjoy writing through a full draft like that, just sort of aimlessly writing through and seeing where it ends up, and then stepping back and looking at it as a whole and saying, this is where it is, but these are sort of the main components, like character arcs or maybe plot lines I want to majorly alter or things like this. And then, I'm a list person also, so like making a list of these are the changes, small changes, big changes, etc., and then just diving right back in and completely like flipping the story on its head, but having a draft that's tangible to work with in order to flip and revise in that way. So my favorite part of writing is the revising process, honestly. And so for this book, that worked really well because it's a very layered and complex story. And so having so many drafts and so many times of going back through it, I think allowed me to add in those layers, knowing what the story was without trying to pave my way through an entire story from the get-go and know everything that was going to happen. I sort of learned about my story as I was writing it, which I personally really loved, and I think helped me craft it in its entirety in a way that really shines better than it would have in other ways of writing, perhaps.
Did you work with an editor?
I did, yeah. So at my publisher, CamCat, I had 2 editors I worked with, actually, and they were both really phenomenal. And very different styles of editing and very different critiques, I guess, on the book, which I also thought was really wonderful to have these 2 different viewpoints sort of shining lights on different aspects of the story to help me bring it all the way to its fruition. But they were brilliant. Both of them were so very brilliant, and I felt very fortunate to work with them.
Oh, great. Was that part of the, did you ever, was it frustrating at all? Did you ever get like, I think that's it? And they'd say, no, I don't think that's,
I think I went into the editorial process knowing it wasn't a perfect book yet. But at the same time, I'd never worked directly with any editors before, so it did, I think, twinge my pride a little to have to look at the critique and say, those are the things I did wrong. Those are the problems with it. But ultimately, once I actually could overcome my pride a little bit and look at what they said objectively, I could tell that they had put a lot of thought into it and obviously knew what they were saying, and that ultimately it would be for the best of the book. But yeah, I did have to kind of get over myself a tiny bit first.
Did you find any particular part really challenging that you might be able to tell us about?
I'll just say the ending was the hardest for me to write. Before I worked with my editors, I actually ended it earlier than it is ended, and then they told me it didn't have enough resolution and that people wouldn't like me if I didn't give them more resolution. So it took me the longest, I think, to figure out where the right ending place was for the story and where I wanted all of the characters to go with that. That didn't leave it on some massive cliffhanger, because that's what it was in my early drafts. It was a very massive cliffhanger, and that just tied everything together a little better. So definitely the last 5 chapters or so were the hardest for me, and were what I was working with mostly with my editors, and what I was mostly appreciative to them for their brilliant insight to help me get it to where it is.
How about, was there any part that was the most fun, or maybe that you're most proud of?
Most fun. So my book has, it's all third person, but there's different points of view, I guess. So most of the book is focused on Everly, my main character, or on another character in the building whose name is Luca. So most of the chapters are based on them, sort of in the present in the building. But interspersed between them are other chapters that are like flashback chapters, or sort of bird's eye view chapters, inside the building that showed different characters and different perspectives. And I really loved writing all of those chapters the most. I called them my fun chapters when I was writing them, or weird chapters, just because they step aside from the story a little bit and take you somewhere else, and show you more depth about the world and the like time leading up to where our characters are, and all of the pieces that needed to fall into place to get them where they are. So I really enjoyed, getting, especially I think the flashbacks were really fun for me to write for characters that we maybe don't even see in the book. Like there are a few chapters focused on Everly's mother, who passed away when she was little, so she's not in the book presently. But the chapters about her in the past, I really enjoyed writing and really getting to shape this character who was her mother, who, is very influential in her life and in the story, even if she's not alive throughout it. So I really enjoyed getting to work with sort of those behind the scenes aspects of the story.
Right. Do you have any kind of like hope for readers when you think of your reader? Like, what do you hope that their journey is like reading it?
Ooh, I hope that they, kind of like you said, have fun sort of piecing the puzzle together and looking for all of the clues that are lined up along the way. I hope that they have as much fun reading it as I had fun writing it. I really deeply enjoyed writing this book. Yeah. I think it's a very unique book, and so I hope that readers can go into it with an open mind and just be along for the ride.
Yeah. Well, I know I haven't, I don't think I'm not a big science fiction reader, but I know I haven't read anything like it before. But I knew early on that I could read it, and it held my attention. I like the fairly short chapters, I guess. That's probably seems to be a trend these days. I don't know. We all have short attention spans or something.
I have had multiple people tell me they enjoyed my short chapters, so I take that as a win. Yeah. It's also not a massively long book. I feel like 300-ish pages for sci-fi is very tolerable. It's when you get into those like 800-900 page books.
Yeah, I think it was pretty manageable at that length. Let me see. I was a little intrigued by the double helix at the beginning of each chapter, and there's like little spaces at different, and sometimes they go along the same, and then they go over the other side, and I didn't figure out there was I'm not much of a science person either, but I was like, okay, why is it over here now? You don't have to tell me.
I think that's really funny. No, I can say so. I didn't put those in. My the designer, the same person who designed my cover, designed the interior of the book, and she's very wonderful and talented. And so she created those chapter headers with the double helix, because I think at the beginning she had asked me for just like a list of topics or like symbols or things that I thought could be applicable for my book, and so I had jotted down a lot of things. And I think I said DNA maybe is just one of the many things in a list of things, so she took it and ran with it. But I am pretty sure, because other people have also noticed that to me, that the space changes per chapters, and I'm pretty sure, I wish it was something more interesting to the story, but I'm pretty sure it's just changes based on if the chapter header is on the right or the left side of the page.
Oh, really?
I think that's the...
Oh, boy, I was like counting them.
Yeah, which is what other friends have said to me too, which makes me think, for my next book, I should, if there's something like that.
You should put a code in there or something.
Yeah, that would have been so much more interesting.
What did you think of the cover photo?
Oh, I loved my cover. Yeah, I just absolutely adored it. So my cover designer, her name is Marianne. Okay. I love her. She gave something like 10 different cover concepts that I could look through, and so I sort of gave my feedback on them and said which ones I liked, but I was, saying the ones I liked, said about this one that it was my most favorite. And so I was very happy when the publisher, who had the ultimate say, decided to go with this one, because I think it fits the aesthetic of the book very well. And it's just perfectly strange and slightly creepy, and you have to look at it a little closely to see what it is, which I think is true of the book.
I'm going to need to look at it a little more, because you sent me the PDF copy. I was just, and there was a picture, I think, there, but I didn't look at it. That it was black and white, and I didn't look at it that closely. In my mind, it was like 100 stories that just straight up of smooth, But then I went back to read the description, and I said, oh. Smooth, it's gray. But then I said it was like old. It's the glass doors in the front, and I maybe I was just kind of you kind of put your own things on it. I'm just like thinking of this big. 100 stories. There are no 100-story buildings in Boston. So I'm like that would be, you couldn't miss it. But,
which is why it's so strange that you missed it for all those years.
It is strange, right? Right. Yeah. But that's part of probably some things probably I didn't quite get. But no, so you are So it sounds like you're motivated to write more.
I would love to write more. Probably not, at least right now, a sequel for this book. Probably this will have to stand on its own for a little while, but would definitely love to write more books. We'll see if they take another 6 years per book, so it might not be an immediate thing, but would love to write more.
Are you working on, you don't have to tell us anything about it now, but have you started working on another one?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Not enough to dive into it. But
now, when you were doing all this writing and rewriting, what did you have a lot of time to do that, or did you have to fit it in certain times, or all busy and stuff? But.
It depended on the season. So because it took so long, I was in college when I first started writing it, and I had more time then. But then when I left college and started working full time, that's when it was most hard to incorporate working on my book, which was almost like a second job, into my evenings or my weekends and stuff like that. Especially the edits when I was with my publisher and like finalizing the book, that was the hardest, I think, to sort of fit into my schedule, which was just busy in general. So at the beginning, it was very easy to work on it. I had abundance of free time. I had full summers when I was still a student. But just got tighter as time went on. But honestly, I think that it was nice I had so much free time to work on it at the beginning, so I could at least get the ideas on the page and get it flowing and sort of kickstart myself by having that time before I was restricted by adulthood in the later years.
Do you have like a time of day that you like to write, or if you're writing a book like you need to, is just part of the day, because it can be kind of taxing and also it depends on your personality, solitary.
Yeah, no, it's true. I prefer writing earlier in the day rather than later, because I don't know, if you wait until it's evening, I'm just too tired at that point. I can't creatively think about anything or critically think about anything. I just want to sit on the couch and consume rather than create. So I definitely think earlier in the day is better, at least before noon. If I'm going to write anything, it's going to happen before noon.
Well, I hope, I'm sure you will. It sounds like you've got a good start here on,
thank you.
on that. So if people want to get the book, I know it's available.
Yeah, it's everywhere online, Amazon and Barnes & Noble and bookshop.org. There's a hardcover, but it's also got an ebook and an audiobook, so you can get all the formats you desire. And
if they want to know anything more about you, or do you have a webpage?
Yeah, they can find out more about me on abigailmilesbooks.com. I'm also on Instagram at abigailmilesbooks. So that's sort of all the places I am online.
Okay. Are you reading any books?
Ooh, I just finished reading a book that people had been recommending to me because they said it reminded them of my book, honestly. It's called House of Leaves. Yeah. Very strange book, like even stranger than my book.
Okay.
Incredibly out there. My book is maybe an introductory book if people want to get into strange books. House of Leaves is like next level, but it was very interesting.
Sounds good. We'll have to check that one out. All right, well, Abigail Miles, congratulations again
thank you
on
so
your
much.
first book, and thank you very much for coming on Author Talk. We hope our viewers will get a copy of The Building That Wasn't, because I think you'll be enthralled and get caught up in it right away. So thanks for tuning in, and again, thanks to our guest, Abigail Miles. We'll see you next time on Author Talk.